Welcome to my video of some of the things I was doing in February. One of the first things I did was set up a hot bin composter, and here is some of how I did it.
So there's roughly a fifth of the bucket of the wood chips they provide. You can see it's partially composted. There's some Christmas tree bits here and bits of wood, general stuff. The idea is just to aerate the compost a bit. And here is half a bucket of shredded paper and cardboard. So I'm going to add the wood chips, mix it all thoroughly together, and then it goes in the bottom of the bin, and we start again. So I've mixed it all up, and I just added another handful of shredded paper after I've mixed up the compost and the wood chips and the paper and cardboard that was in the bucket wheelbarrow already. So that's all ready now to be put into the bin, and we'll see how far up it comes. So here's a final sort of layer. This is some old hay we've got, which is far too old to be used for pets. I thought I'd put that in right at the top, because hay normally composts quite nice and warm. So we're just filling up the kickstart bottle, which we're going to put in the middle of the composter in the top of the current layer. I'll just show you how far that's got up. Current layer's just up to there, so we'll bury the thing a little bit in there, then we'll put the straw in on top to keep everything nice and warm, and we'll hope it starts. If it doesn't start, we'll try it again in a week's time when we've next got some significant quantities of vegetable peelings. So I've got some insulation around the back and around the side, as well as underneath. The underneath is to allow me to collect the leachate from the bottom, because otherwise the screw cap at the bottom is so low down that you wouldn't get anything underneath it to collect the leachate. So all ready now to close the lid and forget it for 3 days. So there we are from a bit further away. That's my new hot bin, neatly installed in its corner, and the wormeries that preceded it are up the top there at the moment, with some of the compost that's almost matured in them ready for use, and this one will hopefully come into production by around about March-April time.
So another new thing in the garden is my wood chipper, and here I am chipping some wood for the composter.
So there we are, halfway through my second bucket full of shredding, and I've been shredding a mixture of twigs and things and these old battens which are a bit rotten and need to be disposed of. So already shredded to go in the hot bin composter over there. So, end of the first week in February, having a look at what's going on in the garden. Here are some lettuce plants I put in a cloche a while back. Cloche has been there for a while, we're warming the soil. This is the lid I made for this water bag, because we never got the right size lid with it. That's out of an old water barrel. And here are my broad beans. A couple of them were trying to flower the other day. It's a bit early for them to do that, but they're coming on quite nicely. They went in October. And this netting cloche here is warming some soil ready for some parsnip seedlings when they're ready to go out. This cloche here was protecting some peas I put in, and I think they've all been eaten by slugs, and the cloche is falling apart a bit, so I'm going to make a new cover for that. Here's the broccoli still coming on, another plant's just coming into production. Still got the protection on over the tayberry because it's quite cold today. The temperature's gone down to about 32 now, so we might be getting some snow. And here are this is really the vegetable part of my garden, but I thought it'd be nice to have something around the base of the apple tree, so I put in some bluebells and some snowdrops, native bluebells and native snowdrops, and the snowdrops are coming on quite nicely. And up here, nothing much happening up there. Hopefully there's some ladybirds hibernating there and some lacewings hibernating there, but we will see next year. Well, in the spring, I mean. So there's the pond. Despite the cold, it's been a bit sunny, so we've had some stuff coming through the filters, which is good, keeping the water nice and clean, and I can see a couple of fish down the bottom there. Might even pick them up on the camera from up here. Here's the Daphne, still in flower. Still smelling lovely. And over here we've got the replanted out flower bed. There should be some crocuses coming up underneath this cover. Yes, I can see a few of them. I'm going to leave the cover on until after this current cold snap and then review whether to take it off. And we've cleared this area, we've taken down the old storage unit, so we've now got the table moved off the lawn and onto the concrete, where hopefully it will dry out a little bit. And these are my two water butts down the bottom here. I sorted them out a bit this year. I put a better connection between the two of them and put a proper overflow in the other side of that one. I emptied them both out because I knew they'd fill up again quite soon, as indeed they did. I do need to do something about that connecting pipe though, because it does leak a little bit. So I need to put a circuit around it or some sealant or something. The other end's okay because that's got sealant on it, but this end leaks. And then the overflow's around the back. And we've got the pipe coming straight down into the water butt because if you use a rain diverter it tends to get clogged up and you don't get so much coming through. So sometimes you can have heavy rain and nothing gets into the water butt. So that's a lot better, but it does mean I need a proper overflow. And you can see the pipe behind there that I've used to make the overflow. And there's a little expanded pipe from the water butt going down into it. So that's all nice. And here's the propagator. I've got some lettuce coming on in there and some parsnip seedlings coming on. And I've got a job to do washing some pots and things, but I think it's a bit cold. My hands are going to really suffer if I do that today, so I'll leave that for a warmer day, to finish on a warmer day. So I'm just getting some pots ready to put some cucumbers in. I'm filling them just over 2/3 full of small plant compost, and then I'm going to top them off with some potting compost, take them indoors and put them on the heat mat to warm up for a little while, and then sow the cucumbers probably tomorrow. There's 4 pots there ready. So there they are, topped off with seed compost, all ready to receive their seedlings. I just did each one a little bit like that to put the seed in the morning. I've decided to get an early start with some runner beans indoors, put them out in the garden early and see how they get on. So to do this, I'm going to prepare some little pots to plant them indoors on the heat mat and then move them out here into the greenhouse. So first of all, I'm going to put some general purpose potting compost in the bottom of a pot. Then I'm going to fill it on up with seed compost, so the seed can germinate in the seed compost, which is probably the best place for it to be. Firm it down nicely, and then because this is going to be handled a little while before it plants out, I'm going to pop the fibre pot into a plastic pot to hold it together. So that's all ready now. All I'm going to need to do is to take my little dibber, make a hole for the seed, pop the seed in, water it, and we'll see how it gets on. And I'm going to do the same for some broccoli plants, because what I do when I put my runner beans in is I put a runner bean plant, a row of runner bean plants a normal distance apart, and then in between the runner bean plants I put in broccoli plants, which grow more slowly but need the ground for a long time to produce a crop. And this is a good space saving way of growing them, and they're also growing next to the beans, and since they need nitrogen in the soil, the beans seem to help them on their way. I tried it last year and the broccoli is looking really good. We've had a few pickings off it already, so I'm going to try it a little earlier this year so we can get some early broccoli. And what I'm going to do is my runner beans are going to be in 3 rows. So I'm going to do a row of 4. So I'll start off 6 seeds, so as I've got enough plants for a row of 4 to start with. And then in a month or so's time, I'll put in another row of 4. And then finally, sometime in April, I'll put in the final row of 4. So I hope I'll get succession from planting them successively. We'll see what happens. So there are my runner beans, 3 Firestorm, 3 Stardust. I'm probably going to put in a row of 4 or 5, so I planted a couple of extra plants. Next task is to get 3 broccoli seedlings in slightly smaller pots, and then they can go indoors on the heat mat to see how long they take to germinate. You need to keep the runner beans watered quite well, because the beans need enough water to make them swell and germinate. I've done the same thing with the broccoli as I did with the runner beans, except I put them in slightly smaller pots. They're all labelled up and they're ready to go on the heat mat to start germinating, and we'll see how we get on with them. So this is the patch where I currently have a Loganberry Blackberry and a honeyberry. And I've just decided to mulch it with a bunch of leaves that I collected from somewhere else, and I put some wood chippings over the top. Part of the idea here is to encourage some of the insect life that lives in wood chips and so on, so that the hedgehogs can find something to eat, and maybe encourage shrews and things as well. And I've also started building up a log pile behind the water butt. There's quite a well established pile that side, but behind it as well, so that there's somewhere for wildlife to take refuge. Had to recover the replanted flower border because some of the neighbours' cats are coming in here and digging up my plants and leaving their poo behind. Needless to say, they don't bury their poo, they just dig up my plants. So I'm hoping that this will keep them off a bit. I've also put down some stuff that's supposed to deter them, some crystals and so on that are supposed to deter them, because eventually this trellis will have to come off for various reasons. Quite recently bought myself a better plastic greenhouse propagator thing, but I kept the poles from the old one. And it occurred to me that one way to keep cats and birds from digging up my lettuces and so on would be to put some netting over them. And the poles here are just about right, and the fittings are just about right. So I've made myself a little frame by repurposing the poles that were once part of a propagator, and I'm quite pleased with that. That should be really a good way, I think, of keeping that bed safe and clean. So there's another redeployment of part of my old propagator. Cats were digging in this bed to do their toilet business and digging up my flowers and everything, and generally causing a lot of damage. So I put a bit of enviromesh over the bed again, but this time keeping it off the flowers so that they're not suffering. I'll obviously have to think of something else, maybe some ordinary netting when the crocuses are in bloom so bees and things can get to them, but at the moment there's nothing in bloom, so I've just used a piece of enviromesh which happens to be roughly the right size.